this show is all about testimony, and everything that I do, I didn't set myself up to be the Ginsu master of any of this stuff. Like, this is all about the kids and the testimony and the concept that people have to collaborate and think out of the box as SDAs, that it's not just about, we have to move beyond where the Adventist experience is a 24/7 loop of preaching and gospel music. There's much more to the Christian walk than that, and God doesn't require us to live in a 24/7 hour loop of preaching.
You got that right.
You know, so what you're bringing to the table, you're talking more. I want to hear about the testimony. I want to hear about, like I said, people that were baptized, people that have come into the league and flourished and had that opportunity for fellowship. The concept of expanding beyond the SDA borders and going to, you know, New Hope Christian and saying, hey, guys.
All right, are you having a good time so far? We want some noise in here this evening. And close the doors because we're going to party in here all night tonight.
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.
He does have a very, very, very high skill level.
All right, man. Hey, no doubt, man. I appreciate it. And, you know, you're my man. So
I knew that it was good.
The experience was just nothing less than legendary and epic and great to me.
We are back on the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network, and we have a very intriguing and special guest this week that's going to talk about their testimony and their ministry and how it's linked to sports. I would like to introduce the owner of the Middle Tennessee Storm, who is a semi-pro basketball team that features Christian as well as Seventh-day Adventist athletes. My next guest is also the executive director of the Nashville Christian Fellowship League, which is a basketball league that encompasses multi-denominations and fellowships via athletics and sport and ministry. And in his spare time, he happens to also be the athletic director at F.H. Jenkins Seventh-day Adventist Elementary School in Nashville, Tennessee. Our next guest is a man of vision. He really understands the concept of outreach and how sports truly enhances the Christian experience and the Seventh-day Adventist education system. I'd like to introduce Carlin Alford to all of my listeners. How's it going, Carlin?
Oh, it's going great. Wow, I got to be honest. I was looking around when you were introducing me and going, who's he talking about?
Well, that's a lot of work. That's you being a relatively young man, that's a lot of accolades for someone of so few years. But I wanted to have you on our show. I think you have just an outstanding testimony, and really, you and I collaborate and have collaborated on various things in the Nashville area when I lived there before I moved out to the West Coast. Really love your perspective and your out-of-the-box thinking that is kind of a stray of some of the traditional beliefs in the Adventist church about sports and how it enhances the Christian walk and how we really need to be focused on building our programs and highlighting our own talent. So I wanted to have you on to talk about it.
Well, first of all, I greatly appreciate it. It's an honor to be on your show and an honor to hear you say those things. Sometimes we get just mired down in really trying to do the Lord's work, and every now and then to know that your colleagues and people who you hold in high esteem are either blessed or see others blessed by your ministry. It is gratifying and it's humbling at the same time. So thank you for those words, and also too I appreciate your friendship and your up to your vision as well. You're actually doing something that I planned on doing, but to be honest with you, I just didn't feel I could take it on, and I really feel very confident and comfortable with what you're doing, because it is, I think it's so needed in time in our denomination for it. So glad to be here.
Well, thanks a lot, Carlin. So tell us a little bit about your sports background and the sports you played growing up, and as you moved from being a young man into going into college into being an adult?
Yeah, and so I come from a sports family, but I also come from a Seventh-day Adventist family. So my father didn't become a Seventh-day Adventist until he met my mother. You can imagine the story there. I don't need to go any further. He wasn't a Seventh-day Adventist when he met my mom, but he was in order to get married. So,
right.
But my mom was a Seventh-day Adventist. I believe I'm a fifth-generation Seventh-day Adventist. I grew up in the cradle of Seventh-day Adventism, Niles, Michigan, which is in the shadow of Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is where Andrews University is. So,
so you're a made man. You literally walk the same path as Sister White and the Kellogg's and some of the mainstays in our church.
Wow. I've been to Battle Creek. I've been to the Kellogg's plant. I got my complimentary box of cereal. Yes, I've seen the SDA trail, so to speak. But I grew up going to SDA church grades 1st through 8th. But the combination of my mom and my dad was, I thought, an awesome experience for me as a child. My dad grew up Christian, but was very much accustomed to the ways of the world before he became a Seventh-day Adventist. And when I came along after they were married, he still had friends who had played football. I remember my barber, who's still alive to this day, was one of my dad's good friends. His name is Al Carruthers, and he was a twin, Al and Ashley Carruthers. They called them the Carruthers brothers. And they were both halfbacks in high school, and they were like, stars in the area. Al still runs his barbershop today in South Bend, Indiana, and most of the top athletes who go to University of Notre Dame get their hair cut there. And so when I was growing up, before I could even play sports, I was around elite level athletes, who would swap stories about practices and things like that. So growing up Seventh-day Adventist really didn't hamper my exposure to, elite sports, basically where I was. And so even though we didn't have a sports program at the FDA school that I went to, church league basketball was so huge back in the late 70s, early 80s, mid-70s, early 80s, and I would tag along with my uncle who played a lot of church league in Lake Region. And when you think about what Lake Region was or is, you're talking about basketball heaven when you're talking about Chicago and Detroit and Indianapolis and Milwaukee, and then everywhere in between, places like Gary, Indiana, and, East Chicago. It was, church leagues would get in a van, or cars, drive 3 hours in the snow for one game, leave right after church, go there, do AY, or what they call AYS now, or what they call MV back in the day.
MV, Missionary Volunteer.
Sing out of the Green Book, sing songs out of the Green Book, and they take AY to the church, the church that they were playing, and then they'd go to the gym, play a game that was packed to the rafters with people. Churches had home and away uniforms, and in some cases cheerleading squads who were in full uniform. It was like, it was because guys didn't play on Friday nights. The Seventh-day Adventist guys didn't, at least. And they took it to the hilt. And that's really what I learned. That's really, it was top-notch. I'll give the youth director back then was Conrad Gill. And under him, it flourished. And, the commissioners were great. So I got exposure to that, and there was some really good talent. And even the guests that played that were non-SBA guys.
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.
I don't know that you guys can work around the Sabbath. And many of them said that they would, but that wasn't the head coach. The recruiters. Mm-hmm. And I think that even back then, I kind of knew that they really weren't taking it seriously. I think that they were thinking, we'll get this kid on campus, and when he walks into the arena, we'll get him practicing on Saturday morning, get him out in time to go to church real quick, and then come back. I think that's what I firmly believe that's what they were thinking. And so I said, you know what? I've had a great experience playing all these sports, but I'm going to go to Oakwood. And so went to Oakwood. And I went to Oakwood not even wanting to play basketball. Not because I was bitter, not because I was, giving up on it or anything like that. I just had my experience, and it was a very fulfilling experience.
So that is a really good start to the conversation. We've had guests on the Lance J Radio show that have played on the Sabbath. We have some that opted not to play on the Sabbath. I'm not a judgmental person. My family actually knew Ellen G. White personally, and they became Adventists on the Morning Star boat down in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth. However, I've broken the Sabbath on many different occasions, and probably will break it on many different occasions before this conversation that we're taking comes out. So I'm not judgmental. However, I always like talking to people that stand on their decision. To me, if you're not going to play on the Sabbath, then you stand on that decision. If you believe that you're going to play on the Sabbath and that's your interpretation of the Sabbath, that it's permissible, to me that's fine as long as you stand on your position. It's the individual that kind of flip-flops back and forth that, they'll play if they get picked to play on the team, but if they don't get picked to play on the team, they'll be the individual that's on a panel at AY, is one of our guests, Julian Kitching, illustrated, on a panel at AY telling young people not to play on the Sabbath because it's detrimental to their walk with Christ. So that's a very strong testimony. You stayed the course in your personal beliefs and your relationship with Christ. However, you were able to meet the Rob Pelinkas and the Eric Rileys and all of these relatively prominent names in the basketball world in the Midwest during your era. It seems like the Lord blessed and guided you, and you still had that awesome experience without having to compromise your personal beliefs.
Year, I was kind of vacillating whether I should transfer out. I was really getting serious about my major. And something told me to run for student government. And I was thinking to myself, well, what would I run for? What would anybody vote for me for? And I ran for athletic vice, and I won. And so I became athletic vice going into 1992. And that summer I decided, let's do some things that never been done at Oakwood. So I met with Mr. Roddy, who was the athletic director at the time, and I said, have you guys ever applied to play interscholastically? And he was like, we've thought about it, but we don't think that the, officials and, church folk will go for it. And I said, well, you're already playing against other teams. Why not make it official? I believe I was the first to actually go through an application process on behalf of Oakwood. We stopped it somewhere 3/4 going in because, that was outside of myself suggesting it. I don't think it was a whole bunch of buy-in, and it probably wasn't the right time. And now today they do, play interscholastically. I'm not taking credit for that. I'm just saying, I wanted to break the ice and get the conversation started because
I think there's some subliminal tones that you are taking credit for it. However, so you may be taking some. You're very humble about it, but you are taking a little bit of credit for it, which is due credit.
No, listen, I'm not going to take credit for the program. What I am going to say is, because of the experiences that God allowed me to have from just being a kid, I can honestly say that pushing the envelope is something I'm comfortable doing. So I'll leave it at that.
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.
Trying to think of what it was the acronym stood for, the NABA, whatever. National Adult Baseball Association. That's what it was. And there's a team called the Michiana Cougars, and played my senior year at Andrews, but I played for them. Did play on the Sabbath. We traveled. We played. I had a terrific year, and when I graduated, still continued to play baseball. You know, kind of around southwestern Michigan, northwestern Illinois, and later on, I moved to Dallas, Texas for a job, and caught a break in the NABA, and actually got a tryout with the Texas Rangers as a center fielder. Now, this is where I will, reveal and be transparent with you. I had no intention of keeping the Sabbath if I had made the team, if I had made the Rangers. In the last at bat that I remember, it was an 0-2 pitch. The pitcher, I believe, pitched at Rice University, Division I school, in the old SWAC, Southwestern Athletic Conference. He was about 6'4", 250, throws somewhere in the mid-90s. And I whiffed at the first two. And the third pitch he threw me, later on I found out was about a 91-mile-an-hour slider. And I got all of it. Or at least I thought I did. And it went all the way up to center field, and I'm trotting to first base thinking it's a home run. And it bounces off the wall. And when it bounces off the wall, I turn it into high gear, and I'm coming around first base, and the center fielder had a rocket arm. He throws it to a cutoff man. Cutoff man is about 15 feet away from me when he catches it. He throws it going towards second base, and it's headed towards my head, and I head into a hook slide. And I had on metal spikes. And my left foot caught one of the spikes caught in the turf. And as I was sliding, I got what's called the Robin Ventura injury.
Oh boy!
I had it before Robin Ventura did.
I've seen that injury firsthand.
Yeah,
it's quite nauseating.
People that look it up on YouTube.
Yeah, it's not for the squeamish. Those that have a weak stomach.
Man, I turned my foot 180 degrees, tore all the tendons except the Achilles, broke a bone, nerve damage, and landed in a heap on second base. And emergency personnel was already there because, they're there for tryouts and stuff. And that was pretty much it for my baseball career. I mean, the emergency surgery, they put me back together. And going into that tryout, I ran a 4.40. A year later, after they had patched me back up, I ran a 4.7. And the difference between a 4.4 and a 4.7 as a center fielder is the difference between playing and not playing.
Huge difference.
It's just, I mean, you have an average bat and an okay arm, and you're relying mostly on speed, then and the speed is taken away. It's not interested. I didn't cry when I was hurt. I'll tell you what I cried in that process. I cried when my agent told me when I woke up from the surgery. I said, "Well, were they interested?" Yeah, they were interested. What was the contract? Well, $1.5 million a year, $800,000 signing bonus, 3 years.
Yeah, that would definitely be a tearjerker.
But I will tell you this, I'm not going to lie. If I was clowning with $15,000 job, I would have been insanely lost forever.
Right.
I'm not lying. I'm just not going to lie about it. Single guy, living in a big city with all the money that you could think of at your hands, I would have been lost. Not going to lie.
Yeah, sometimes the Lord definitely knows what's best for us, and He steps in and sends the angel to turn the foot inside out to keep us, all of us, from ultimately losing our soul.
Yeah, and it was an age and wisdom will teach you those things. You could walk around bitter for a while. I was never bitter. I'm not one of those people. I just kind of move on to the next thing. So, I just moved on to the next thing and pulled my life back together and moved away from Dallas, moved back home to kind of regroup, and stayed with my parents for a little bit, and got a job up there, and then eventually I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, I think back in 96, 97. And I got a great job and reconnected with my now wife, who at the time I had met at Oakwood, but we didn't date at Oakwood. And she had moved here to Nashville, and we had gotten together and gotten serious, and we were headed towards marriage.
All right. Well, we'll be back with more Carlin Alford as he tells his great story on the Lance J Radio Show. I have many other questions to ask him about some of the charity work that he's done and the fellowship leagues that he started throughout Nashville and the South. So we'll be back with more of Carlin on the Lance J Radio Show.
Diagnosed with cancer, and it was a tumor in my right ankle, not the ankle I hurt playing baseball. It was a tumor. I went through chemotherapy, got sick, almost died. They fused my ankle together, so I wasn't able to play ball for like 12 years. 6 years ago, it will be 7 and 8 next April. 6 years ago, so I had started the league, had the league going for about 4 years, couldn't play, couldn't run up and down the court. They amputated my leg because I had gotten a staph infection. They amputated my right leg 8 inches below my knee. That happened in April. It was addition by subtraction because that October I was playing flag football in the City League, and that December when we started up the NCFL, I formed my own team, and on opening night I almost had a triple-double.
So you use, for those listening to the Lance J Radio Show, Carlin Alford is really giving a testimony here. You built a league. You had a chance to matriculate through Oakwood and through the Adventist system. You went to Nashville, started your family. You began building this league. It was so wildly successful that other churches, other denominations wanted to be a part of what you were building. In the midst of all of this, you're dealing with cancer. You're dealing with the fact that they had to amputate one of your legs. What was the rehabilitation like, and how were you able to, because you just said that you got your leg amputated and basically you were out on the court getting a triple-double within a blink of an eye. Was it that easy, or was it a difficult, long, grueling rehabilitation process? As you know, I experienced a very lengthy illness that completely crippled me. I was in a wheelchair. It took me a long time to get to where I could walk again, much less play basketball again. So what was that process like? And spiritually, how did that help you develop into a better Christian, a better man?
Well, let me clean up the time frame for you. I had been diagnosed with cancer before I started the NCFL. So before I started, actually shortly after I moved here. So back in 1997, 98. That's when I went through the chemotherapy and then the extensive surgeries that fused my ankle together. So, I was walking with a limp and, couldn't run anymore. So I hadn't played ball in 12 years, by the time I started the NCFL. And I could do everything. And in between that time, that's when I was driving, right? So in 2001. But now we're getting ready to go into our 10th year, so what does that make it? So like 2004, maybe, 2005 is when we started the NCFL. So I had already gone through the cancer part of everything. It was a staph infection that I got in my ankle that had the chemotherapy and everything years later. And I'm telling you, it really, when I went, they wanted to amputate my leg when I first had cancer 12 years before that. There was a tumor in I said no, held on to it, and God did addition by subtraction. So I wasn't able to play ball, wasn't able to run, wasn't able to do that for 12 years. And finally, when the staph infection came, they were like, we got to take your leg or else it's going to take your life. So it really wasn't that hard of a decision.
Right.
And as I was in consultation with the surgeon who was going to do it, I was sitting in the waiting room, and on the cover of ESPN, the magazine, was a guy in a Lakers uniform with a prosthetic leg. His name is Jared Fields. He was a soldier and overseas and got his leg blown off. Came back over, was a tremendous athlete, and they were talking about him possibly having a tryout with the Lakers. And I'm like, but he's got one leg. And I looked at that leg, and I saw the pieces on it, and I said, wait a second, I want one of those. So I literally tore the cover off of it, took it in to the surgeon, with me, and I said, will my insurance cover this leg? They said, well, we'll check. And when I woke up, yeah, they found out they would. So the timeline is that I got my leg amputated that April. That summer, it took 3 months before the swelling would go down completely for me to get fitted for a prosthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, end of July, beginning of August, I got my prosthetic leg. I walked the first day on it. It hurt, but I walked the first day. And I said, Lord, I don't know what you're telling me, but if you're saying that after 12 years I can play ball, I'm going to play some ball. And
indeed. Praise the Lord.
I remember going to some of the guys that I had, by then the NCFL had already been started, been going for some years, and I hooked up with one of the teams that was playing in the summer in a city summer league, and they let me play. And I was hobbling and hopping up and down the court. But when I sank my first shot, I was like, wait a second, I'm going to be able to do this. So I kept working at it, kept rehabbing, kept working out. Ended up playing flag football that year. We may have even won the championship. And, yeah, in 2010, we won the championship. And that, that December, had my own team, played, when you're the coach, you can get all the minutes. Played myself, and, like I said, had close to a triple-double. Didn't have a triple-double, but I think I came a couple of assists short of having one. But at any rate, maybe one of the greatest accomplishments of my life, and not because of me, but because God just decided to give me a gift that night and say, hey, you suffered long enough. I couldn't get a triple-double when I was in high school. Well, I had a couple, but, it's not like it's easy. And it was one of the most enjoyable experiences, one of the most fulfilling experiences. And it was a tremendous testimony for me to say that God sometimes God will give you the desires of your heart. And
absolutely,
he could give you addition by subtraction. They took my leg, but I gained back so much mobility and freedom from it that I don't regret it at all. I'm glad they took it.
And it's really a testament to how powerful the God that we serve is. He's just so amazing that God sees the full picture, and his vision and clarity on what's going to happen 10, 20 years down the road is just so beyond anything that we can consider or comprehend. So where can the listeners to my radio show, where can we find out more about the Middle Tennessee Storm and the various things that you guys are promoting and the testimony? This sounds like something I want my listeners to look you guys up, and if there are any specific players or specific events you have forthcoming that you want to promote, please let us know how we can get access.
Yeah, certainly. We're part of a world-class organization in the CBA, and we run everything through their site. So our page is on www.playcba.com, and you can like the Middle Tennessee Storm there. We've got a Facebook page, Middle TN Storm. Be sure to like us there. Follow us on Twitter, Middle TN Storm, @MiddleTNStorm. We tweet our games. So tomorrow night, we're going to be tweeting the scores of our game, the Twitter cast. So certainly follow us on all social medias. Look us up, like us, tell all your friends, and certainly be sure to follow your favorite players on our team. And really, at some point in time, I do believe that we're going to have skills training and some camps to take some of our guys from our Adventist systems and give them the skills that they need to compete at this level. Because there's a difference, and I've learned that pretty quickly, that, guys who play Division I ball got Division I coaching. And we've got plenty of talent in the SDA church, a lot. And it's not even a size thing. We got plenty of big guys, plenty of talent, plenty of athleticism. But there's a huge difference, a huge gap between the coaching at the semi-pro level and overseas versus just coming out of college in our Adventist system. So I think that's the next frontier for us. is to get the skills training and making it available for our guys who have the tools to go to the next level.
You are listening to the Lance J Radio Show on Advent Sports Network.